In the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. But Emma of Normandy did something else entirely. She switched sides. Imagine being the Queen of England, watching your husband's kingdom burn under the torches of Viking invaders. Your husband dies, leaving you a widow in a war zone. Most women would flee. Most mothers would grab their children and run. But Emma didn't run. She looked at the man who had destroyed her life, the Viking warlord Cnut, and she made a calculation that still chills the blood 1,000 years later. She didn't just surrender, she married him. To understand Emma, you have to peel away the layers of medieval lady and see the politician underneath. She was born in Normandy, a land of warriors, and shipped off to England as a teenager to marry King Ethelred II, a man so incompetent history remembers him as the Unready. For years, she played the dutiful wife, bearing him 2 sons, Edward and Alfred. She did her job. But when the Vikings came crashing through the gates in 1016, Emma realized that loyalty to a dead regime was a death sentence. So, when the dust settled and the Viking king Cnut sat on the English throne, Emma made her move. She married the enemy. But there was a catch, a terrible price that would haunt England for generations. To secure her new crown, she had to agree to send her existing sons, the rightful Anglo-Saxon heirs, into exile. She essentially orphaned her own children to stay in power. It was a cold, brutal act of survival. This wasn't a romance, it was a merger. Canute needed legitimacy, and Emma was the living symbol of English royalty. By marrying her, he wasn't a usurper, he was a successor. And Emma? She got to keep her crown. But she became a strange, hybrid creature, a queen of the English and a wife to the Viking. She birthed a new son for Cnut, named Harthacnut, and made it crystal clear where her loyalties lay. This new boy was the future. Her older sons, shivering in exile in Normandy, they were the past. For 18 years, Emma ruled as part of a North Sea empire that stretched from Denmark to England. She was powerful, respected, and arguably the most influential woman in Europe. She commissioned books, patronized the church, and acted as a bridge between the Christian, English, and their pagan-leaning conquerors. But beneath the velvet and the gold, the resentment was building. Across the channel, Edward and Alfred grew up wondering why their mother had abandoned them for the bed of a barbarian. But power is never static. In 1035, the great King Canute died, and just like that, the stability Emma had bought with her betrayal evaporated. The wolves were at the door again, and this time, they were her own stepsons. Chaos erupted. Cnut's illegitimate son, Harold Harefoot, a man Emma despised, seized the throne while Emma's favorite son, Harthacnut, was stuck in Denmark. Suddenly, the Queen Mother was vulnerable. In a panic, she did something desperate. She wrote to her exiled sons, Edward and Alfred, the boys she had cast aside decades ago. "Come back," she whispered in her letters. "Come, claim your father's throne." Was it motherly love? Or was she just looking for a new weapon to use against Harold? History suggests the latter. The boys returned, lured by the promise of power. But it was a trap. Alfred was captured by Harold's men. The chroniclers tell us his eyes were gouged out with red-hot irons, and he died in agony soon after. Emma had summoned her son to his slaughter. Blamed for the disaster and stripped of her allies, Emma was forced into exile herself. The queen, who had survived everything, was kicked out of the country she had ruled for decades. It seemed like the end. But Emma of Normandy was like a cockroach in a crown. You couldn't kill her ambition that easily. She bided her time in Flanders, plotting, waiting, and eventually the wheel of fortune turned. Harold Harefoot died in 1040. Emma triumphantly returned to England, this time with her Viking son Harthacnut by her side. He was crowned king, and Emma was back where she believed she belonged, the power behind the throne. But Harthacnut was not his father. He was weak, likely sick with tuberculosis and prone to drinking. He wasn't long for this world. Sensing that her Viking dynasty was crumbling, Emma made one last incredible pivot. she invited her surviving Anglo-Saxon son, Edward, back to England, the boy she had abandoned, the brother of the boy she had gotten killed. She brought him into the fold, setting up a bizarre joint household where the Viking king and the Anglo-Saxon heir lived under one roof, managed by the mother who had played them against each other for years. It was a masterclass in political flexibility. Emma didn't care about lineage or blood purity. She cared about being the mother of the king. Whichever son sat on the throne, Emma intended to be the one holding the scepter. To cement her legacy, she did something almost unheard of for a woman of her time. She commissioned a book. The Encomium Emae Reginae is a piece of dazzling propaganda. In it, she rewrites history. She barely mentions her first husband, Aethelred. She paints herself as the equal partner to Sinut and the beloved mother of her sons. It's a PR campaign designed to justify her choices and smooth over the ugly cracks of betrayal and murder. She wanted history to remember her as a peacemaker, a weaver of peace. But the reality was far bloodier. She was a survivor who treated her children like chess pieces. And like any chess player, she eventually miscalculated. In 1042, Harthacnut drank himself to death at a wedding feast. The Viking line was extinguished. Edward, the son she had neglected for 30 years, was now the sole king of England. Edward the Confessor. And Edward had a long memory. You might expect a happy reunion, a mother guiding her son. Instead, Edward struck. One of his first acts as king was to ride to Winchester, where Emma was keeping the royal treasury. He seized her gold. He seized her lands. He stripped her of her power and pushed her into the shadows. It was a cold, public humiliation. Edward hadn't forgotten the years of exile. He hadn't forgotten that she preferred his Viking half-brother. He hadn't forgotten Alfred's eyes. Emma was left to live out her final years in quiet retirement, a wealthy but politically neutered dowager. The woman who had been the wife of 2 kings and the mother of 2 more ended her life watching from the sidelines. But even in her defeat, Emma's legacy was ticking like a time bomb. By marrying Ethelred and then Sinut, and by linking the bloodlines of Normandy, England, and Scandinavia, she had created a web of claims to the English throne that was impossibly tangled. Emma died in 1052. She didn't live to see the firestorm she helped create, but 14 years later, in 1066, the final act of her drama played out. Her son Edward died without an heir. And who came to claim the throne? William of Normandy, Emma's great-nephew. William the Conqueror used his distant familial connection to Emma as part of his justification for the invasion. The Norman Conquest, the event that destroyed Anglo-Saxon England forever, was in many ways the final ripple of the stone Emma threw into the water 60 years earlier. She had brought the Normans to the English court. She had normalized the idea of a foreign ruler. She was the bridge between the old world and the new, though that bridge was built on the bones of her enemies and the tears of her children. So, was Emma of Normandy a villain or a hero? Was she a she-wolf who sacrificed her sons for ambition, or was she a desperate woman navigating a brutal, male-dominated world the only way she knew how? The truth is likely both. She lived through 5 reigns. She survived invasions, exiles, and the murders of her kin. She refused to be a footnote. In a time when women were expected to be silent wombs, Emma was a voice that roared. She forced England to reckon with her. She proved that a queen could be a kingmaker, even if the price was her own soul. History often judges women like Emma harshly for playing the game that men played freely. But looking back at the wreckage of the 11th century, one thing is undeniable. Emma of Normandy didn't just survive history, she made it. And she did it with her eyes wide open. If you enjoy the dark, untold stories of history's most ruthless women, hit that subscribe button. We have more secrets to uncover.
Inform the garrison at York that the supplies must be diverted south. I want the main host ready to march by the end of the week.